Hello and welcome back to the Battle Room. My name is Colin, and today we're going to be looking over the teams that were used in the March International Challenge. This is the most recent International Challenge, obviously. It's best of one, and the prize being, of course, points for the World Circuit and also a Shiny Zapdos just for entering. So I think this tournament was a very interesting one. Going into it, I think a lot of players were expecting some easy matches because there are a lot of players who entered just to get the Shiny Zapdos, which makes a ton of sense. But also, there was a little bit more on the line than normal, because in the last one, there wasn't too much that we were playing for, but this time there was CP to be earned, CP obviously being points to get to Worlds. So, let's look at the teams that did really, really well. So we have 38 teams, roughly. There's a lot of teams that people didn't post. Obviously, there's tournaments coming up, regionals, Japan Nats. So everyone's kind of keeping their guns a little bit closer to their chest, but we're going to look over the ones that we do have access to. So, first up, obviously, is this Colossal team here. So I think this is really not too surprising. There's a player named Jude. They're an insane Colossal player, and they play this team. They've played this team for the entire length of the format so far, so it's not too surprising to see them do well here. This Colossal team is very, very straightforward in my opinion. It makes a lot of sense what we're seeing here. We're seeing the two restricted Pokemon, Zacian and Yveltal, who aren't necessarily reliant on max, and then we have the Colossal mode, but obviously Yveltal can still max, Rillaboom can max if need be, and yeah, it has really good matchups versus most things. This player is very comfortable with this team, so it makes sense for it to do really, really well here. It's not really particularly best of one-y. I think it is better in best of threes, honestly, because whipping out the Cold Mold at a surprising moment is really, really strong. But yeah, I think it makes a lot of sense that it did really, really well. The next team we have access to is this Palkia Calyrex team. So, this team is rather important, I would say. I think that a lot of players are starting to see the rise of this team. If you haven't seen the rise, you're about to, because this team is very, very good. Porygon 2 is originally on this team in the Dusclops slot, but primarily this team functions mainly with a max of either the restricteds or Alecki. Alecki is usually Life Orb set with a lot of damage, and then Palkia is usually Lustrous Orb, and then yeah, you just kind of go from there. You have a Trick Room mode. It's very Trick Room centric, but it does have this Alecki mode that's just go, go, go. And Palkia and Calyrex can function in and out of TR, especially Palkia can be pretty good out of Trick Room. So it makes a lot of sense. It has a lot of good supportive Pokemon, Amoonguss and Incineroar, to help Palkia, whether it's in or out of Trick Room. And Calyrex just sweeps in Trick Room. It's a very, very good team. It's very Trick Room focused, but I think it's a really, really strong, potent team that doesn't need to rely on it because of the Alecki. This is a team I think you'll be seeing a lot. I'll probably be talking about tomorrow as well, because I think it is very, very important going into regionals. And I think it's no surprise that it did really well here. We don't know what kind of sets they ran. It could have been kind of memey, but I imagine that it's pretty standard stuff, and it is focused on setting up Trick Room. The next team we do have here is Lunalization, which is kind of surprising. Lunala not really known for being very good right now, but the Pokemon that we're seeing paired here are really, really strong and potent Pokemon. Incineroar, Rillaboom, Porygon. Porygon's a little bit more surprising. Obviously, probably adds the Trick Room mode, but I do think that the other two are really, really strong. Also, Porygon can run like a max set with like Hyper Beam and stuff to like throw off a Trick Room mode in a best of one. We see this a lot. It did really well in the last IC, if I recall correctly. So this Porygon could be good. Thundurus is really, we don't know what it's going to be or what it's going to do. So I think this is another good set. Another good two Pokemon that we don't necessarily know going into team preview. And then Lunala can really function in the Chaos. It can function either with Airstreams or it can function in Trick Room. And then we also have good fake out partners for Lunala, and then Zacian brings everything together. It looks like a pretty solid team. I would be curious to see the sets, but I think for the most part, probably Meteor Beam probably can function with the Airstream mode, and it probably just does a lot of damage. So yeah, I mean, it's not too crazy. Lunala is kind of a cool Pokemon. I think it's a Pokemon that I don't really want to say slept on, because I think it's probably about where it needs to be, but I think it is an okay Pokemon that you could find yourself building around or using in a tournament. These teams are obviously lost. We don't know. They didn't want to post their teams. And next up we have Kingdra plus Kyogre with Shedinja. I think that Kyogre Kingdra is really obnoxious to play sometimes, and it's something that I think some players aren't prepared for. Also, Shedinja being a great checkmate mon is always really fun. This just looks like some really good hyper offense, really fast-paced, aggressive team that can checkmate with Shedinja. Nothing too crazy, but I haven't seen a lot of Kingdra plus Kyogre plus Shedinja team. So I think it looks like a really cool team. You have your 2 max options of Landorus and Kingdra, and you just kind of play from there. You try to do as much damage with your restricted so Shedinja can win. It makes a lot of sense. Incineroar cannot be brought here. It looks awful to bring Incineroar, but it might be necessary to help with Shedinja. So I think it just messes with people's plans to beat Shedinja, and I really like that. Next up, we have Kyurem. Kyurem Shadow Rider. I really can't say I've seen a lot of Kyurem Shadow Rider, but it looks pretty aggressive, fast-paced with the Aleki. It's got Grimmsnarl for speed control. It's got Aleki. It looks like a pretty simple, team comp here with Ferrothorn as a potential Trick-Romancer, but also just a checkmate mon, because I think that sometimes you can get those max Quakes on there and then have Intimidate, and Ferrothorn just wins games. So kind of a neat team. I'm not really in love with Kyurem, but I think it's a pretty neat team. Now we got another Shedinja. This one is a little bit more, I would say, like defensive focused. Like we got Rillaboom, Grimmsnarl, Zapdos to set up screens, play defensively. The other one that we saw was like Kingdra, Kyogre, Zacian, go, Airstream boost, Water Spout, do as much damage as possible. But this one looks like it just like kind of keeps you honest and makes you have to respect Shedinja the entire time while playing a pretty standard, Kyogre's Zapdos Zacian team. It's a really standard team outside of the Shedinja. Incineroar is usually in that slot, and Shedinja does offer a little bit here. Like it does make the end games a little tricky if you don't know it's there. It can be obnoxious to play. Kind of a neat team. I like it. I like the take on it. Next up, we've got Incin, Palkia, Zacian. So normally I'd say Amoonguss is a pretty integral part of these teams, and it's kind of interesting that Amoonguss isn't here and Rillaboom is, and also Porygon is, because it looks like a pretty standard version, but we usually see like Thundurus involved. I would say Audie's team is the one that always comes to mind. We see Thundurus and Amoonguss and Ditto instead of the Grimmsnarl, Porygon, and Rillaboom, but I don't necessarily mind their take. It creates more of a Trick Room-centric mode, and it does put a lot of pressure in Team Preview. I'm a little bit worried about their speed control, but the double Fake Out does seem kind of cool with Palkia, and a Rillaboom Palkia just seems like really obnoxious. It gives you a little extra healing. Rillaboom can help deal with Kyogre as well for a teleportation. But I don't know. I don't know if I really like the Rillaboom as much as I would like an Amoonguss there, because I think Amoonguss could fit in there like pretty easily. But I think it's a cool team nonetheless. I think Palkia is like a strong mon going forward. I think it's kind of proven that it's not necessarily like the same level as Kyogreization, but it's really starting to contest the Groudon like Shadow Rider level of strength for me. I think Palkia is doing exceptional time and time again, and I really do feel like it could be I think it is one of the best mons in the format, restricted wise, just because it does do so well with Max. And I think sometimes having a Max restricted that's actually really benefiting from Max is really strong. I loved it with Dialga, and I think Palkia is just kind of a better version. Okay, so this is another one of those Palkia plus Ice Rider teams, but this time around they opted for Feeny, and they opted for Feeny, and their Trick Room setter is going to be the restricted instead of like Porygon or Dusclops. But Feeny does stop enemy Amoonguss, which is really obnoxious. But this team just looks pretty awesome. It stops Amoonguss. It messes with it stops Amoonguss, and it messes with the standard version of running it. I also like Feeny because it can be very supportive. It can be heal pulse spam. It can function well. But I also don't love Feeny at the same time, because I think one of the benefits of Palkia is Max Worm wins. So like it helps with your matchup versus Amoonguss, but at what cost? But I imagine you don't bring Feeny that often, and I think the other 5 Pokemon are much more core to the success of the team. But Feeny is an interesting take on it nonetheless. We've got the 24th team with Regidrago. Recently Marco Fierro did a video on it, and in the video he explains that the main reason that Regidrago is there is to beat the Calyrex plus Palkia team, which is pretty cool, because it's able to just nuke Palkia and stop potential Trick Room setup. And so I think it is a pretty cool addition to the team, and Regidrago is mainly for that matchup, so I've heard. And then it just looks like a pretty standard hyper-offensive Whimsicott plus Kyogre team. I like it. I worry about the Max because it really is Rillaboom or Kyogre, and that does make it kind of weird, but it is a best-of-1 focus team, and I think that's a really, really good thing going into these type of tournaments. This team... actually, I was going to say it's pretty standard, but it's actually not. It's a little bit different. Usually Grimmsnarl is there over P2, but it does have a nice Trick Room mode, and it has Gastrodon and Groudon anyways, who are great Trick Room partners. So I do like the idea of the Porygon 2 being added, and it does basically just kind of let the player play the game, and I think that's always the best part of those kind of teams. But this team does look really, really good, and yeah, there's not much to say about it. It's a good Sun team. This team is pretty cool. Landorus Eye is actually kind of a cool Pokemon because it is a decent Mon versus Aleki. It's another ground type, but you're not adding too much Intimidate to your team, and it can still get access to Fly for Airstream, but it usually is primarily a special attacker. I think Bingji's set was probably going to be the normal one, where it's like Earth Power, Stone Edge, Fly, and it's like a really specific for Sun matchups, because Sun matchups hate this guy. It outspeeds Charizard by 1 point, can OHKO with Max Rockfall, and it's just putting pressure on that entire team, because even if you Intimidate it, they have Max Quake, so it's just with Earth Power. So Landorus Eye is like kind of interesting to me. I think it's a mon that we might see in the future, and it's a Pokemon that I'm kind of interested in myself, especially paired with like Yveltalzation. It looks great. It's a great max for those guys. This guy's a max, and then you have Gastron. It just looks like a really well-rounded team. Double Ground is awesome typing here. I like this team a lot. This is probably my favorite one so far. I like this. Next up, we got Golisopod. Holy moly. I don't even know what the Golisopod is supposed to do. I really genuinely have got no words for that one. Because, like, there's not Colossal. That's, like, primarily where I would expect it, where you'd Aqua Jet it. Maybe it Aqua Jets the Lando's weakness policy. I'm not even sure. But, again, I think the core, the main way I see Yveltal plus Zacian going and trending is probably towards Aleki, Landorus as the partners, and that's, like, the core, and usually Incineroar. But here we see Grimmsnarl instead, and then the weird Golisopod. But I think the core 4 is still really, really potent and is going to be carrying a lot of the wins here. I think it's kind of the norm for... it's been the norm for a while, but I think this is like kind of where it's trending. It's like very offensive, very aggressive type team. I know Snow did use it and used... I think Snow is actually coming up. But I know Snow did use it and he used a Life Orb Yveltal, which I think is pretty cool, and I think it's not as much prepared for as the traditional Assault Vest. This team is extremely boring. I talked about it in my other video. But I think this team is really, really, really good. It's probably my favorite team in the format right now. I like to use it a lot. I've had a lot of fun with it in MPA and also just playing on ladder. I think it's really good. There's not too much to say. It gives you a lot. Screens plus Iron Ball is good, but a lot of players aren't even using Iron Ball anymore. Incineroar is great with the team. Zacian Groudon is a good pair. Assault Vest Groudon is insane. Gastrodon's really good for Yawn, and Charizard adds that amazing wildfire effect. It's just a great team. Okay, so we're back to the Palkia plus Ice Rider stuff, as I mentioned earlier. This one has Double Follow Me and Fake Out. This is just like hard Trick Room. The Lucky mode is gone. This is just basically a hard Trick Room team, which is interesting. I love to see them play against Amoonguss and how they deal with it. It probably just involves not pressing Trick Room and relying on the natural bulk from these two, but it does look like a really solid team. Like 2 Follow Me's, a Fake Out, and a Trick Room setter. 3 Trick Room potential setters. It's hard Trick Room, which is kind of neat to see it doing so well, because usually those teams kind of suck. Wow, this team's so boring. I built this team like 7 times. Like, this core here, it just seems so good on paper. And I'm kind of excited to see that this player did well with it, because I swear every time I make this one, it just seems so bad. Like, I'm like, I don't know why. Maybe I'm just piloting poorly or not putting as much time as this player did into it. It's cool to see this team do well. This core right here, the 3 starters plus Thundurus is insane. You can basically slot any legend right there, and it's probably a good team. The typing wise just looks fantastic from these 4 plus Zacian. Like, it's just crazy. You could put Kyurem there. You could put really whatever you wanted. You have great max candidates in this Pokemon and potentially this Pokemon. It's just, you have 3 Fake Out users. It just seems so good on paper, and I never can get it to work, but I'm glad this guy did. Wow, this team is caught me off guard a little bit. Yveldon plus Landorus and Aleki and Bronzong. So, like, Yveldon, I think, has fallen off pretty hard. I know Joe did win a tournament early with it, but then it kind of disappeared. I got second, and it kind of disappeared. I don't think a lot of players really, like, are messing with Yveldon nowadays. But this is a really cool take on it. I like the Charizard, and Bronzong Joe did mention to me that Bronzong was absolutely insane, and it's the best part of the team, and it carried him. And so I think Bronzong is really cool, especially going to this Palkia Ice Rider stuff, that getting Max Quick Boost on a Bronzong can just be like a game winner against that stuff. So I wonder if Bronzong was just a huge, like, really good medical. I think Bronzong's really interesting. It's something to think about going forward. But this looks like a really cool team. You got anti-Trick Room mode plus a Trick Room mode, and then you also have, like, this super fast aggressive stuff with Charizard, Aleki, Groudon, Yveltal. It looks pretty cool team. Another Shedinja. Again with the aggression. Was it the same team? I wonder. Yeah, it looks like the same team did place up here as well. Again, I mentioned it earlier. Like, just the aggression with Shedinja seems really neat. This player used Zacian plus Dialga. Didn't want to share the rest of their team, but I think Zacian Dialga is really cool and something we could talk about. It seems like it's redundant, like you're running double steel restricteds, but Dialga can actually stack the boosts onto Zacian or other partners, but it can stack on a Zacian, and it does function like as a hyper offense Pokemon. Traditionally, I think you'll see like Whimsicott pair with this or Thundurus. Or Grimmsnarl even, to just try to get speed control of the game, and then you just start hitting things as hard as you can with Life Orb Dialga. Because you have so many super effective hits. You can run like Max Rockfall, you can run Max Ice with you can run Hailstorm with Blizzard. So you just have all the coverage in the world and a Mon with 100 base 50 special attack. So they're an interesting pair and something I think I'm keeping my eyes on, especially because it does do really well against stuff like Palkia, Ice Rider. It also does really well versus Kyogre. So it's kind of an interesting combo. Next up is Kyogre team with Shadow Rider and then double priority protectors, which is kind of neat. This is just hyper offense the team. This one's crazy. Tailwind, Electroweb. I bet you this is like Imprison or some shit on this Calyrex because this thing goes so hard, honestly. Like, this team is so aggressive. Like, I never could use this. Like, I never could do it. It would keep me up at night. This is so offensive. I don't really like it, but it's interesting. Alright, here is the standard team, I would say. Oh, no. That's usually an Alecki. So this is another hard Trick Room team, actually. Just with this time, it's P2 over Dusclops. Yeah, this Palkia team, guys, is, like, kind of insane. It's something, like, that you guys need to be ready for going forward, especially if you're going to regionals. This team is really picking up speed. I don't know if you guys have heard of it. I think most of you probably have. I think it's being talked about a decent amount, but it's absolutely insane. Next up is Snow. This is the team I was referencing earlier with the Life Orb Landers. I think this is like a really, really good Yveldon skeleton. I think this is like the standard Yveldon at this point. Or sorry, Zaishlevel. It's really, really good, and this is an amazing team. You should go check out Blue Yossi on Twitter if you want to get the team. It's really insane. I had a lot of fun using it, and I think that I think this is the way that these teams will tread, because I think this is a really good start to the team, and I think it can be spiced up a little bit more and more. So now we're in the top 10. This is where the insane players are. Obviously, Snow is one of those. But we're starting to move up. Obviously, these two are tied. Like the rating is really close at this point. But we're gonna see a Calyrexization team with double genies and then Incin and Gastrodon. I think it's kind of cool because the team relies on max, and the double genie max can be really overwhelming, especially when you don't know which one's gonna max. If this one's physical or special, or I mean special plus support, is like you don't really know, and it adds a lot of mind games to it. Gastrodon just brings everything together consistently, and Incin is good. I think it does look kind of hard versus Kyogre, but I think this team looks really annoying to deal with in best of one. Okay, so this is the kind of style I was referring to earlier with Dialga. It seems like Urshifu is kind of big with Dialga. But yeah, it's about just spamming Quake boosts or Steel Spikes, depending on what you need, doing as much damage as possible for Zacian to pick things off. You got Grimmsnarl for speed control, you got another Airstreamer, and you have this guy to blow holes in the enemy team. I think it's kind of a cool team. Really aggressive stuff with Dialga. Yeah, this looks like a pretty standard Kyurem team. This is kind of the interesting Mon. Ditto is really cool because I think Ditto can be anything, and a good Ditto player is absolutely insane. But I do think that these two Pokemon combined are really crazy together. And stacking boost on a Ferrothorn is obviously really good. You really only have one max in that thing, or maybe Ditto. But I think it's just kind of like Kyurem teams can sometimes really catch good players off guard, and like they're really oppressive, and they can like kind of gimp a matchup. Like you can play against Kyurem and kind of get screwed over if you're using something standard. The Kyurem players are usually really confident in their Kyurem, so I don't know. Kyurem tends to do well. This is a very aggressive version of of Kyogre plus Zacian, but you know it's still got that consistent core. I think you almost will never see. I think Zapdos is always like really important to the core. It really brings everything together, and then the Amoonguss, like you have Tailwind with Whimsicott 2 instead of Tornadus. Amoonguss can just follow me and be supportive, and Urshifu is kind of the interesting Pokemon here. But I do think Urshifu is really cool just because it's doing big damage and helping pick things off and set things up for Zacian late game. And we've got ourselves another Shedinja Rain. I think Shedinja Rain is kind of a thing. Like, I really didn't know that there were this many Shedinjas. This is the first time I'm looking at this list, and Shedinja is really popping off in terms of these usage stats. Good lord. But yeah, I mean, it makes sense. Rain has always been Shedinja's best friend, and it just doesn't seem like there's a lot of enemy weathers at the moment. And checkmating things like Zacian with Shedinja can be really huge. Checkmating Kyogre, Zacian. Shadow Rider can get into a spot where Shadow Sneak one-shots it. So, like, it makes sense to me that this even can checkmate something like Thundurus if they don't have a dark move. So, there's a lot of things that this thing can checkmate, and it's annoying in best of one, too. So, mad respect for Shedinja doing so well. Alright, this is the standard Ice Rider team, I would say. This is like the bread and butter, number 4 here. I think this is how traditionally the team was built, and I think this was the start. And from here on is where we're going to see exploration into this archetype. It just seems really, really strong. Also, I didn't mention this earlier, but the Calyrex is just a white herb, and so that makes it even harder for Incineroar to deal with it. And it kind of negates the first Intimidate, which can be huge in a game, especially if you're switching it in on a Max Quake, you're done for. So I think this team is really cool. It's just very strong. I'm going to talk about it a little bit tomorrow as well, because I'm going to review teams that you should prepare for if you're going to regionals. And I just think that it is just a good team. It's just really consistent. It's got an out of Trick Room mode, a really good Trick Room mode, and then just really good Pokemon. You know, like these Pokemon are insane. And then you have like Palkia and Calyrex, who are just kind of like oddly anti-meta and have really good matches versus a lot of the common stuff. Number 3 does not show us. And number 2 is Joseph Ugarte, Joe UX9. I don't know how you not know who Joe UX9 is, but Joe did play second in this one with the pretty standard team. He basically stuck to his guns and said, I'm going to play better than you. And he did. Not too much to talk about here. I know he did opt for a Screens Grimmsnarl and no Iron Ball trick shenanigans. I think the Screens Grimmsnarl is really consistent, and I think going forward we're going to see a lot of that as well. But I still think the trick stuff is here to stay, especially with the Grimmsnarl plus Groudon combination. It is really good. But I think Screens just makes it more consistent, and Joe recognized that and did really, really well with it. No real surprise that Joe is performing really well and at a high level in these tournaments. So congrats to Joe for second. And number 1 is Miluka, who opted not to share their team. But again, it's this Calyrex plus Palkia team. I think this team is insane. Like, I haven't tested it yet myself. I look forward to. I kind of want to try it out. It seems right up my alley. But it's performing so well right now. This team is performing at the highest levels, winning over and over. And I think it's exciting to see it do so well, because it is kind of a weird combination of restricteds. But Calyrex is kind of showing itself to be one of the top tier ones. I personally did not think that would be the case, but it's clearly performing well. I'm going to have to test this team out and get back to you guys, because this combination seems to be absolutely insane. It won the entire IC by a pretty significant margin here. If we look at Joe had a huge lead over third, about 20 points there, more than 20, like 22. And then Miluka had another 20 over Joe, like a little over, under 20, which is really insane when it comes to those kind of high level, this high level best of 1 tournament. This is usually like all these guys down here are like really close when it comes to points, right? Like all the way down to like 13th through freaking 3rd is within 10 points of each other, and then these guys have 20 points. So that shows you how above these two players were, and it shows you how damn good Palkia plus Ice Rider is. Anyways, thank you guys so much for watching. Hopefully you learned something from this. Hopefully it helps you with your team building and your quest to be the world champion. But until next time, I'm Colin. Have a nice and amazing day. I love you. Bye.